We all know or have read Genesis 22, where Abraham takes his son Isaac to be a burnt offering. But there's been something that's just always bothered me about that scripture. Would Yah really command something that later he repeatedly condemns, which is human sacrifice? It just makes me think about Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8. How can you say we are wise and the Torah of Yah is with us? Surely the lying pen of the scribes has made it into a lie. Could the scribes have misunderstood what they were translating? Or could they have done it on purpose to fit their pagan idol, JC or Yeshua? Because Christians love to use Genesis 22 as a prophetic picture of Jesus, where Abraham is seen representing the father and Isaac the beloved son. And they show that Isaac carries the wood for the offering, just as Jesus is said to have carried the cross. And Abraham is willing to offer his son, which Christians compare to God offering his son. And when Yah stops Abraham from killing Isaac and provides a ram caught in the thicket, Christians see the ram as a substitute pointing forward to Jesus or Yeshua, who they believe became the ultimate sacrifice for the sin of humanity. But that is a major problem, according to Yah. Jeremiah 19, verses 4 through 5. Because they have forsaken me and made this an alien place, because they have burned incense in it to other gods, whom neither they, their fathers, nor the kings of Judah have known, and have filled this place with the blood of the innocent. They have also built the high places of Baal to burn their sons with fire for burnt offerings to Baal, which I did not command or speak, nor did it come into my mind. But some of you might say, well, that's okay. It says not to burn their children to Baal, but it's okay to burn our children to Yah. And the answer to that we find in Deuteronomy 12, verse 31. You shall not worship Yah, your Elohim, in that way. For every abomination to Yah, which he hates, they have done to their gods. For they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. So that's what the pagan nations do, but Yah forbids it and hates it. Which brings me back to my question about the story of Abraham offering his son Isaac. What is this story teaching us and telling us? Could it be that Yah is giving us a warning and showing us not to sacrifice our children? Could that be the example? And at the same time, could what have happened on the mountain maybe be a covenant transition, moving from Abraham the father to his son Isaac? Could it also be that Abraham is passing the covenant and the priesthood over to his son Isaac before Abraham's death? So let's begin by looking at when Yah appeared to Abram. Genesis 17, verses 1 through 2. And when Abram was 99 years old, Yah appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be blameless. So Yah didn't ask Abram for a sacrifice or a ritual. He said, walk before me. And even though Abraham and his wife Sarah were old, Yah promises them a child. Genesis 17, verse 19. Then Elohim said, no, Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. So did you catch it? Yah already declared to Abraham that Isaac, his son, would inherit the covenant. Isaac would have descendants. And what does the name Isaac mean? It means he laughs, or he will laugh. That doesn't sound like a name that represents someone being a human sacrifice. So years pass and Isaac grows, and then Yah speaks to Abram. Genesis 22, verse 2. And he said, take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. So now let's look closely at the words offer him there as a burnt offering. It doesn't say offer him there and make make him into a burnt offering. It says offer him as or like a burnt offering. And the Hebrew word for offer is alah, and it means to go up, to climb, rise, or ascend. So in Hebrew, the sentence is literally saying, cause him to ascend there as a burnt offering. So Yah never says, kill your son. He says, help him to ascend. So let's continue. Genesis 22, verse 3. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which Elohim had told him. So when they arrive in the land of Moriah, look at what Abraham says to the young men with him. Genesis 22, verse 5. And Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there and worship, and we will come back to you. So did you catch that? We will come back to you. Abraham didn't say, I will return to you without the boy. He said, we will come back. Abraham knew Isaac would come back with him, especially because of the covenant Yah had already made before Isaac was born, that Isaac would have descendants. So let's continue. Genesis 22, verses 6 through 8. So Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the 2 of them went together. But Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. Then he said, look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, Elohim will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. So the 2 of them went together. So let's look at this closely. In Genesis 22, 6, Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And before Aaron and his sons are formally consecrated into the priesthood, look what it says in Exodus 24, 5. Then he sent young men of the children of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to Yah. So just like Isaac is a young man, these young men themselves are participating in offering sacrifices before the priesthood was established. So now let's go forward and actually look at the Levitical priesthood. Leviticus 1, verse 7 through 8. The sons of Aaron, the priest, shall put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall arrange the pieces, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is on the fire upon the altar. Did you catch that? The sons of Aaron, just like the son of Abraham, Isaac is participating, learning. So let's keep reading. Genesis 22, verses 9 through 10. Then they came to the place of which Elohim had told him, and Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood, and he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. So as we look at these verses, we need to realize that Yah at this point has never given the actual command not to sacrifice their children upon the altar like the nations. The other thing we need to realize is something that happened right before Yah tells Abraham to take Isaac to the land of Moriah. Genesis 22, verse 1. Now it came to pass after these things that Elohim tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. So all of this that is happening is Yah testing Abraham and teaching. So let's continue. Genesis 22, verse 11 through 12. But the messenger of Yah called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, do not lay your hand on the boy, nor do anything to him. For now I know that you fear Elohim, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. So keep in mind what the messenger of Yah says. Do not lay your hand on the boy, nor do anything to him. Because Isaac was a prophet of Yah and a servant, an anointed one. Psalm 105 verses 9 through 15. The covenant which he made with Abraham and his oath to Isaac, and confirmed it to Jacob for a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant, saying, to you I will give the land of Canaan as the allotment of your inheritance, when they were few in number, indeed very few, and strangers in it. When they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people, he permitted no one to do them wrong. Yes, he rebuked kings for their sakes, saying, do not touch my anointed ones, and do my prophets no harm. So YAH was confirming that no harm would come to Isaac because of his everlasting covenant and promise. So let's continue. Genesis 22, verse 13. Then Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. So even though Abraham and Isaac had said that YAH would provide a lamb, in the end, YAH provided a ram with horns. That's very specific, and we'll come back to that. But I want to look at the burnt offering instead of his son Isaac. And for that, we'll go to Numbers 8, verse 11. And Aaron shall present the Levites before YAH as a wave offering from the children of Israel, that they may perform the work of YAH. So the Levites in the future, just like Isaac, are given to YAH as an offering. But they're not killed or burned. They are living men presented to YAH for his service. Malachi 3, verses 2 through 3. But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto YAH an offering in righteousness. And now let's talk about the ram. Why did Abraham and Isaac say YAH would provide a lamb, but YAH provided a ram? So to understand that, we need to go to Exodus 29, verses 19 through 22. You shall also take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands on the head of the ram. Then you shall kill the ram, and take some of its blood, and put it on the tip of the right ear of Aaron, and on the tip of the right ear of his sons, on the thumbs of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot, and sprinkle the blood all around the altar. And you shall take some of the blood that is on the altar, and some of the anointing oil, and sprinkle it on Aaron, and on his garments, on his sons, and on the garments of his sons with him. And he and his garments shall be set apart, and his sons and his sons' garments with him. Also, you shall take the fat of the ram, the fat tail, the fat that covers the entrails, the fatty lobe attached to the liver, the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them, and the right thigh, for it is a ram of consecration. So do you see that? YAH used a ram instead of a lamb because he knew the ram is associated with dedicating the men to priestly service. And why mark the priests' ear, hand, and foot with the blood of the ram? It's so the priest is set apart to hear and obey YAH, that his work and service are set apart to YAH, and that he may walk before YAH. So after what I believe is Isaac taking over the covenant responsibility and the priesthood from his father Abraham, does Isaac ever go on to build an altar for YAH? Yes, he does. And we find this in Genesis 26, verse 25. So he built an altar there and called on the name of YAH, and he pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants dug a well. So after Abraham and Isaac sacrificed the ram as a burnt offering to YAH, what does Abraham call the place? Genesis 22, verse 14. And Abraham called the name of that place YAH, as it is said to this day, on the mountain of YAH it shall be seen. And that word for seen, it can either mean to be seen or perceived. But what will be seen or perceived? Could it be the meaning of this whole story? That it's the royal priesthood and the covenant and the promise that YAH gives to his people Israel. Isaiah 41, verses 8 through 10. But you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham, my friend. You, whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, and called from its farthest regions, and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and have not cast you away. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your Elohim. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Now listen very closely to what Sarah actually says in Genesis 21, verse 6. And Sarah said, Elohim has made me laugh, and all who hear will laugh with me. Psalm 126, verses 1 through 3. When YAH brought back the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue was singing. Then they said among the nations, YAH has done great things for them. YAH has done great things for us, and we are glad.